again, so this is where lads, thank you, oh you've got for the plug in there. So we'll talk about projects later, we'll talk about your weekly research question later. Again, this book is slightly larger than most. Two things I'm trying to see if Cecilia's not doing the question now. I want to see how quickly it loads, which by the looks of it, it's fairly fast. Yeah, you didn't have to lead in pictures of cats. So, what we're going to do is we're going to move on to alright, we've got it, Lockie, you plugged it. We're going to move on to our new topic. Apologies about this projector at the moment, I'll try and get it fixed later, so it'll be recorded. So we're moving on to our new topic. Alright, so obviously we left off with castles. Now, one thing that we talked about many times, do that on later, don't do it now please. We talked about, when we did history, we talked about the church. Okay, what do we say about the church?
It was religious.
One
at a time, we're not recording this, so speak up, play, use that man voice of yours.
They were like just under the king. They were like the most powerful.
They were probably above or
yeah.
They were pretty damn.
They were the most powerful thing in most of Europe.
Yes, so we had the church, and we had good old God. All right, they like that. They like the guy. All right, so for centuries I've got here. Monarchs ruled by the idea of the divine right. Now, what the heck does that mean? The divine right.
So like by blood, like you, like royalty. It's like your kid is going to become leader, and then their kid's going to become leader.
No, it's a little bit different. Divine right has got to do with God. Okay? It's got to do with God. So God is the boss. So basically what this divine right said was the king ruled both the crown and the church. Alright? So, a theory known as, Ashley Hogan, word of the day. I don't even think it's going to work.
Caesar.
Does anyone want to try that word? I can't. What?
Caesar.
Everyone quiet. Test to find it. What does it say?
Well, it says serotonism.
And it means?
It means no definition.
No definition. Yeah. I've got the definition. There is. You need to go for Wikipedia. I want one person who I'm going to make is going to be Ronan. While I'm talking, I want you to find out about that word and what it means, please. All right, let's keep on going. So, on the Catholic Church side was the belief that the Pope. Now, this is the deal. The Pope was a representative of Christ on earth. So the Pope back then, basically, he was a representative of God on the earth. He was God's PA. Okay? Because God obviously doesn't cruise around the earth back then. So he was a representation of God, as in, he was like God's voice. Okay? So, pretty good job. So, they should have the ultimate authority over state and its crown. Basically, the church was the boss. Alright? So, this is going to be a lesson which has a little bit of detail. I like to do these ones when we come obviously the castle project was quite free and creative, and I feel we need a bit of a come down to get you back into focus. So this lesson is going to be a lot more wordy. I've broken it up with videos to make it more interesting, but this is our come down lesson. Okay, now we're back into history as we know it. Alright, so quite a lot to get through in here. Again, I've broken it up with some interesting videos. Alright, so I'm going to do a little bit of talking. And how this is going to work is when I finish my little bit of talking, there's some serious thinking and writing that you've got to do. Okay, we'll do that today. So, let's talk about, first I'm going to talk about the church, and then I'm going to talk about this little thing that they went on called the Crusades. Now, those of you, which should be all of you who did your weekly research question, will now know a little bit about the Crusades and know a little bit about knights. Okay? So, hopefully you did that. Let's move on. So, the power of the church. Alright, that's them there. Good looking bunch of guys. Really big ears for some reason.
Why is the one at the top look like an elf or goblin or something?
Back here. Well, you've got to remember this would have been a woodcut. Okay, so this is a woodcut. A woodcut. Does anyone know what a woodcut is?
Wood.
Carve it out wood.
Yes, it's like a stem.
Yes.
Okay, so this is cut out of wood. It's pretty hard to get some detail in there. This is the wood cut. And I will give you a spoiler, CP, where we talk about Japan. I've got a pretty cool project lined up, which is all about wood cuts, and we'll start making some of these.
With that,
Luke, had a question?
that woodcut thing, wouldn't you have to
Reverse it.
carve it in reverse?
Exactly.
Oh, that'd be hard.
Okay, so the power of the church. So during the Middle Ages in Western Europe, alright, so that's where we're focusing. That's where we've always been focusing on at the moment when we're talking about stuff. Western Europe. Ronan, how's that coming along? Your task?
Yeah.
Can you answer it?
I can read that.
Read it out loud. What is it?
I'm gonna attempt. Seropapism,
Yeah, big word.
yeah, is the idea of combining the power of secular government with the religious power, or making it superior to the spiritual authority of the church, especially concerning the connection of the church with government.
What does that all mean?
The church is powerful.
Guys?
Basically, church is better than government.
Really? Is that what it is?
Does it sort of mean like the church has power over, well, it sort of has power over the people as well as the government?
Okay, cool. Alright, we'll definitely come back to that word later. Alright, thank you for that, Ronan. So, during the Middle Ages in Western Europe, Christians, okay, again, now we're talking about, so let's just kind of narrow this down. So we're talking about Western Europe and we're talking about Christians. Alright, so that is our main religion that we're looking at, the old Christians. So, they followed a version of the Christian Bible which had been translated into Latin, alright, and copied by hand. Now, here's the trick, which we'll talk about soon. Back then, no printers. Okay, no printers, no internet, no iPads. If you wanted to read a book, if you wanted to make a book, you wrote it by hand. Every single book, okay, had to be written by hand. We haven't even got a printing press yet, which we are going to get very soon. Alright, again, sorry to spoil it for you, printing press is coming up soon. But at the moment, everything was written by hand. So, if you wanted a Bible to check out, what old God's been up to, you needed to get a Bible that was handwritten. Now that bugger is thick, like you've seen the Bible. It's like that big, and that's really small print. So it would take a long time to translate one of those. Now, before I move on, let's think about this as a class here. So, we've got a book, okay, got to write it by hand, pretty big, alright, so that would take a lot of time to do. What would that book then be? Expensive. Alright, we've got an expensive book, which is all about the Bible. Now back then, what did we talk about with our people? We had the king, we had some knights, we had some barons, then we had peasants who were what?
Peasants.
Poor. So, would they be reading this book? No. So here's a problem now. We've got the church, okay? They've got the books, they've got education, they're smart, they can read. So they're now saying all of this stuff, and these poor people, they just have to agree, because they can't read, they can't write, they haven't got access to a Bible. Alright, so this is going to start to cause a few problems, which we'll talk about. So, despite the prevalent use of the Latin language by the Roman Catholic Church, most medieval Europeans were illiterate, meaning Jesse, illiterate? They what, sorry? They can't read alright. So, in their own language, alright, these guys couldn't even read or write in English, let alone Latin. I mean, who here can speak Latin? All the Latin I know from Indiana Jones. So, let alone be able to understand Latin. Members of the clergy, alright, so clergy were, who were the clergy? Catholic priests, so they were in the God Club. So members of the clergy, I've lost my spot here, were among the only people in medieval Europe who could actually understand Latin. So we've got this Bible. It's meant to say how you're meant to live, how you're meant to rule your life. It's written in Latin. The only people that could really read it or talk about it were the church. So basically, what happened is, you know how you see those stained glass windows when you go to old churches? Do we even have any old churches around Massachusetts?
Yeah.
Not really old churches, Clay. Not like in England.
Does that mean that the church could screw everyone over and get them to do what they want?
Well, we'll talk about that. I probably won't say screw over, I'll use some other words. But yes, I mean, they knew what was going on and they could preach to these people, and these people could really not question it because they couldn't read the book. Alright, so basically what happened was in these church services, most people looked at the images in stained glass windows and on the walls. Like that's how they figured out what the Bible was about. That's why if you go into those really old churches, so here's one here. If you go into those really old churches, if you have a look, if you go to the start, you can actually see the story of the Bible in these images coming across. Because these guys couldn't read or write, so they used images to actually figure out what this is all about. So, hand-copied manuscripts such as the Bible required painstaking effort to create. So for this reason, in medieval Europe, the only people with access to the Bible were the church. Alright, so again, we're seeing a real segregation here, aren't we? We're seeing the church having the power, having education, and then we're seeing the poor with none of this. Alright? Bo, do you got your iPad up? Excellent. So a real big kind of half and half going on. Right? Kind of like rich and poor. We've now got educated and uneducated. Which is why you guys go to school. Alright, which is why you get to hang out with me all the time.
If we went back in time, we would dominate.
Yeah, you'd be like MacGyver, man. You would be able to make fire, you'd be able to do this kind of cool stuff. Come back
They have fire.
Yeah, but
They didn't have lighters.
Let's have lighters. Okay, so, since even the nobility were unable to question, this is the key, right? They were unable to question the teachings of the church was able to maintain power. You couldn't question these people because they couldn't read, they couldn't write. It's like, if I went to you guys, and I said, everyone, you know what? The world is flat. Now, if you couldn't jump on Google Earth and go, well, let's freak around. Alright, if you didn't have technology, if you didn't have information, if you didn't have knowledge, if you didn't know that it was round, and I came to you, I'm a church member, I can read and write, booyah, I can speak Latin, alright, then you would just believe me. Because you had no knowledge. But you guys can question everything because you have knowledge. And this is the biggest struggle I have with you guys, is that you don't. You don't want to question, you're just like, yeah, sure, okay, I'll do it. You know, you should question it. If a teacher gives you work, you can question it and say, hey, I don't think this is right. I don't think I should work this way. I'm 14, I should work this way. Alright, do it. Alright, question it. That's what you're not doing. And that's what happened back here. Alright? These guys couldn't question it because they didn't know. But the difference is you guys know this stuff. You know what works for you. You know what's enjoyable to do. You know what makes you learn. So question it. Someone gives you a sheet of paper with, notice how I'm working in other angles. Someone gives you a sheet of paper with 20 questions or whatever, you're like, that's not how I learn. I learn like this, and you question it. Alright, that's enough of that. So,
And then you get it.
did you like that? Yeah. I thought you were all going to stand up and you lied at the end. Alright,
That was deep.
so again, let me move on, because I'm getting into some freaky stuff right now. So, did they have iPads? So, at the beginning of the Middle Ages, so we're talking 500 AD, so we're going back a little bit. Modern scientific knowledge and technological achievements such as landing on the moon, this is like 1,500 years away. Alright, landing on the moon, but they didn't even know that they could do that. Alright, they didn't even know what it was for. The moon was like a giant piece of cheese. So, it was not until the Middle Ages, so now we're jumping to the 16th century, that the church's teaching of the earth being at the centre of the universe was challenged. So let's just go back to see how, I don't want to say ignorant, but they were because they didn't have knowledge. So basically up until the 16th century, the church had said that the earth was the centre of the world, centre of the universe. Alright, can you see how that kind of, if you back then didn't have science, you don't want to watch these videos, you're paying attention to me lads. That would be both of you. Thank you. Basically, you had no knowledge. All you knew was humans and the sun rose and that was all magical. So they thought the earth was the centre of the whole entire universe. Now you guys know that's not true, hopefully. Hopefully.
No matter what you go in the universe, you're in the big.
So what is the centre of our universe, guys?
Nothing.
No, there is. We're talking about our universe, our piece of town.
The sun.
The sun.
Oh, what's they said? Solar system.
Okay, also our solar system. Sorry, lads. Alright, our solar system. Obviously, the sun is the centre of our solar system, alright? So, back then though, it was the earth. The earth was the most important thing in the world, alright? The sun was still sitting there. So, that's starting to get questioned. So, here we go. Since most of medieval Europeans were without any knowledge about how the world worked, they unquestionably accepted the teaching of their religious leaders. It's as simple as that. This is how simple it was, Maddie. These guys had no knowledge, they weren't educated, they had no experience, they looked up to one person who did have knowledge, okay, who did have experience, who could read and write, and basically they said, well, everything he says must be true. Kind of how you look at me. That's when you laugh. Okay, there we go. But hopefully, at least technically, you would look up to your parents and your teachers because they have knowledge which you don't have because they're old. Is that right? So they have knowledge that you don't have. So hopefully, when your mum tells you, Clay, please, Clay, don't run with scissors, you'll go, you know what, Mum, you're knowledgeable. I won't run with scissors. Alright, so hopefully that's what you're doing. And that's what was happening back here. So, this is the key. Maddie, this is important. This is important for you because you'll go to hell. Alright? According to the church. According to the church. I don't think you're going to hell. I think you're a lovely person. But one of these teachings, alright? Well, that looks fun. No, that's giant zombie man eating you in half. So, one of the main teachings of the church, this is number one. Alright? Jesse, you need to listen to this or you'll be going to hell too, man. Alright? One of the main teachings were people who disobeyed God and Mr. Garcia and the church would be sent to hell. Alright? So that's it. That's it, number one. So if you disobey what the church says, you're going to hell. Now again, let's go back. You guys are smart people. Maddie, you guys are smart. So you know that technically, if you don't do your weekly research question, you're not going to go to hell. Well, yeah, basically, like, thank you, Jared. You're not going to go to hell. Because you know, Alicia, you know that there is, again, technically on your belief, you know that there is no hell and all this kind of stuff. Alright? But these guys didn't know that. If you were uneducated, you guys are already smarter than everybody I'm talking about right now back then. Easily.
I'd like to have maths competition because I'm usually.
They didn't believe in maths. Alright. So guys, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a bit to get through today. So, if you didn't know any better, and you didn't, if the church says you're going to hell, you're smart, you're going to hell. You don't disobey the church. So, this is what you've got to look forward to. Guy that kind of looks like a Muppet, ripping you in half. You can see what's happening here. You're in a giant pit, and you're getting burnt alive. Well, that looks fun. So, if you can't, let's taste that. If you can't read or write, and you have no knowledge, alright, about anything, and the church, or your pope or whatever, gives you this image and say, hey, if you don't do what the church says, that's happening to you, as if you're not going to be scared. Like, oh crap, I'm in a bucket, I'm naked, I'm burning. That's what they said happened. And you couldn't question it because they didn't have any knowledge. Like I said, you guys are smarter than these people already. That looks like a lot of fun. So they're eating each other. That's kind of gross. And that's just, wow, that's just painful going on there.
What is it?
It's in the captions if you read the captions, but they're depictions of hell.
That's just a close-up of that, like the first one.
I kind of like it. Oh, so, we're going to have a bit of a break in a second. So, out of the belief that God would recognize their benevolence, anyone? Word of the day, Ashley? Benevolent. Wait, this is like the third word of the day. Benevolence? Have a go at it?
Benevolence? No.
The quality of being well-meaning and kind. Just being a nice guy. Like, I'm benevolent. Benevolent? I can't speak, but that's what I am. And grant them entry. Basically, if you're a good person, you go to heaven. You're a bad person, go to hell. That's it. Simple as that. Alright? So, wealthy kings, this is cool. This is really cool. And we're going to talk about it later. It was a free ticket to get out of hell if you had some coin, which we'll talk about. It's really cool. Which you can still do now, actually, when you think about it. So, wealthy kings and nobles donated land, houses, and money to the church. This is how the church got so rich. Alright, this is important. This is how the church became super powerful. Alright, you're a wealthy landowner, you're a king, you got stacks of cash, alright, and you're like, I really want to kill some people and, sleep with all these people and all this naughty stuff. But I don't want to go to hell because that sucks. So what I would do is if I give the church a stack of money and land and really, grease their palms, then I'll be forgiven and I'll go to heaven still. Yay, I'm happy. And that's kind of what happened, alright? So, all these rich people, they enjoyed being rich, but they also enjoyed, not going to hell, but they also enjoyed the whole killing and pillaging stuff. So, what they would do is they would donate all this money to the church, and they would be forgiven of their sins. Hey, you go to heaven. So, this made the church the largest landowner in medieval Europe. The church owned the most land in Europe because of this. People were giving them money. Alright, bit of a break. Kind of not really, and I left some Latin there on purpose. Kind of not really relevant, but we just need to chill out for a bit.
Welcome to our monastery, please have a chair. Good to see you monks so deep in prayer. Once the praying's finished, your chores must be done. The main rule of a good monk's life is no fun. We have to pray 8 times a day, 7 days a week, and copy all these manuscripts in writing so antique. I'll finish all this technique once I have a feed. Milk the cows, milk the sows, vegetables feed. I'll be doing that and praying too. Very well, gents, I bid you adieu. Adveniat regnum tuum. Okay, brothers, I think he's gone. Now the bishop's not around, throw off these religious gowns. Hunky, chunky, funky monk, get down. It's not all hymns and praying, it's not all work and no playing. So let's stop misbehaving and get with the funk. We'd love to have a party, eat food that is hearty. Let's get the music started, drunk like a monk. Play that monkey music, funk boy. Just wanted to check that during my absence you're honoring.
Alright, you can watch, obviously it's in your book, you can watch the rest of it later. That's why I put them in your books now, okay, so you can watch them later. Not now, you can watch them later. Alright, so we'll talk about the monks and why they rap. So, let's keep going here. According to the church teachings, another way to show one's religious devotion, this is where we're going to move on, which you all know now because you did your weekly research question, was to embark on journeys to sacred places. And these were called pilgrimages. The Crusades were a certain set of these, which you would know if you did your weekly research question. So, they went on a pilgrimage, alright, to sacred places. So we're going to these places where you could pray, and you could ask for forgiveness, sacred place. What would a sacred place be to religious people?
Jerusalem.
Boom, why?
Because that's apparently
Land of Jesus.
Where JC kind of, rocked it in his little crib or whatever. So I don't know, I'm not religious. Alright, so they would do this. Alright, now, this is where we get to our Crusades. Europe embarked on a form of military pilgrimages. Now, this is a little bit different. It's a military pilgrimage. What does that mean? Uh-oh, you had military in front of something. Grace?
military.
Yeah, so they're actually sending out armed forces. They're sending out knights, okay? And these were called the Crusades. Now, we'll talk about that later. You all have a little bit of idea because you do your weekly research questions. See how I'm plugging that sucker? Yeah. All right, so the Crusades were responsible, were a response by an appeal by Pope Urban II for Christians to fight for Christ. So this is where it gets a bit weird now. They fight for Christ by taking control of Jerusalem for the Muslims. Basically, we'll get into the Crusades a little bit later, but the Crusades were saying that the Christians were right, Muslims were wrong, you need to fight for the right to party with Jesus. So, that was going to work. And so they went to fight a lot, but we'll talk about that in a second. So, before I get on to the bit of work we're doing today, I've been pretty negative against the church, I guess. I called them a whole bunch of names, like popes. So I have been pretty negative to them. Alright, yes, they had knowledge and maybe they were a little bit too powerful and all that kind of stuff. But, lads, we won't be sitting next to each other again. They did some good stuff, okay? They weren't just all, death and go to hell and, they did a lot of really good stuff. Okay, so we're going to get to that in a second. So, the supreme... Oh, I've got another word for you, Ash, you ready? The supreme influence of the church resulted in not only being concerned with... Ash?
I can't really see it.
There it is.
Existential.
Ecclesiastical.
Oh, you had it! You got it! Say it again.
It's like testicles.
It's nothing like that.
Ecclesiastical.
Right, it's basically... Wait, I can I'll do this. Alright, here we go.
Siri.
Let's Siri this sucker up. Oh wait, can I do it? Do I have to do it? Oh, here we go. Alright, here we go. What does she say?
Ecclesiastical.
Boom, Siri. You can do that. You can do that with your books. You know you can do that with your books too, right? Yeah. Yes. You can do your books the same. You go to sleep. Oh, you better turn it on. You better turn it on in the settings first.
What is the setting?
I'll do it later. I'll show you later. I'm glad you're excited by that. Alright. Can we shut Siri up now? She needs the earrings.
Why is she so annoying?
Well, she's not. So basically, they had powers over social and political matters. So even since kings, thank you. So even though kings were often illiterate, all right, they called upon members of the church to help them. So again, religious guys,
Of course.
the religious lads could read and write. Kings couldn't. Okay, some kings couldn't, so they got their help. So the education of clergymen enabled the church to play an important part in education. So, education. Church got this rolling. Alright, they got this ball rolling. Brandon has a question.
Another question just stated that word that we were trying to figure out before, it's cassava.
Bless you. Thank you. So they had a big role, okay, in education. So the church were teachers in the earliest form. So they got schools together. The earliest forms of schools were the church. They kind of got that. So you have the church to thank for this, where you're sitting down on a Monday, where it's lovely and sunny outside. You could be out there playing with sticks.
Good idea, Joe.
But the church said, no, you need to learn so you don't go to hell. Alright. So the very first kind of books. They also translated books and all that kind of stuff. So, this is what we're looking at. This is what we're looking at the moment, guys. This is how it worked. Pope at the top. Pope was the guy. Clay. Pope was the big man. Alright, we've done this very similar kind of setup to what system that we looked at.
Middle system.
Very similar. Pope at the top.
It works.
Cardinals, archbishops, and bishops, and then we go off into monks and nuns and friars, so you can get the bald patch, and local priests. Yeah, he was the most famous one. So again, that's your setup, that's your hierarchy, which you can check out. Alright, so let's move across a little bit here, because I want to get on to what we're doing. Alright, so I'm not going to talk about this. Alright, you can come back to that later. So the church hierarchy, alright, is important. So, the Pope, which is always a man, sorry, no, he's always a man. Always a man. Always been a man. Probably the way the church is, it probably always will be a man because they're like a million years. She wasn't a Pope.
Oh, yeah.
She was like a crispy.
No, Pope Joe.
Like,
Pope Joe.
yeah. Did you guys check what Mr. Yeah, I looked into what Mr. Nucky said last week.
Afterwards he said it he didn't even know what he
Yeah,
said.
I will check that out. Alright, so the Pope is a man. Always a man. The most important person in the church. Like we said, he's a representation and staff of God. So he headed a vast network of religious workers. Alright, so the church and the community. Now again, this is important because you're going to see a lot of kind of negativity, I guess, against how the church controlled everyone. But they did a lot of good stuff. Alright. The church or cathedral, so the buildings that you go to, alright, there's pretty places with the nice windows, they were built in the centre of the village, okay? People stood, oh, I've got another section, another word. Idiots. Anyone go on that one?
Dictionary.
Should I Siri the sucker up?
Today.
Alright, idiots. But you bang, boom, 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 boom.
Nay.
Thank you, Siri. It's the middle section, alright? Every Sunday for Mass. Does anyone here, you don't have to answer obviously, Jordan, are you awake? Does anyone here go to church on Sundays?
Which?
One?
Especially
Two? That's cool, that's fine, alright? But back then, everyone would have had their hand up. Alright, everyone went to church.
Oh, you'll get
Alright. Yeah, we'll go to church.
You would go to
Go to church. Alright. So, this village, this church, It was also used to become, like, you would pay your taxes there, it would be the courtroom, it was used for a lot of things, not just for, you know, the kneeling and standing and kneeling and praying. So, medieval Catholic Church was also important in establishing many of the social institutions of Western society. So again, the church set up these kind of things in an early form.
What, set up Facebook?
No. Universities, legal system, hospitals. Again, no church. The whole idea of a hospital wasn't around, okay? They did that too, alright? They safeguarded relics, works of art, alright? During times of pestilence, the church gave the community great comfort. Anyone want to have a go at pestilence? We're going to be talking about a pretty wicked pestilence soon.
It doesn't mean like times that are like hard or bad or...
A fatal epidemic disease.
Black Death.
Like what?
Black Death.
Excellent, we'll be talking about that a little bit later. Alright, so let's sum this up before you do a little bit of work. So, what have we learned about the church in medieval times? I want one from each table. Let's start graceandjordan.co. What have we learned about church?
Everyone goes, no one stays, like, no one doesn't go to church.
Everyone believes in the church. And by church I'm saying popes, I'm using that as a way to sum everything up. Thank you. Next table, what else did we learn?
That they were high in power.
A higher power.
Yeah.
Oh yes, they're at the top is what you're saying. Excellent. Yelling out. Alright, actions table.
They took advantage of the people.
Ooh. Did they take advantage? That's fine. That's fine.
They didn't know, they weren't taking
That's fine. I mean, alright guys, let's split it up right now. Really quick question. So, I'm going to come to it in a second actually. So, I should say, and I think it's a good question, were the church taking advantage of these people who couldn't read and write?
No.
Do you think?
Yes.
Or do you think that they believed in this, they thought it was important, and they feel that everyone else should believe in it?
No. Yeah, that's probably
I think it was it's like a power thing that eventually someone just got and
Yeah?
then like,
Johnny, question?
Answer.
There probably is.
Thank you. Alright, so we'll come back to that question. Actually, I think it's a really good question. Alright, or a good statement, actually, probably a better term. We'll come back to that. It's actually really good. So Jordan said that was the biggest landowner in medieval Europe. What else did we learn about church? He was a representation of God on earth. Lads, what else did we learn?
The church started.
Yes, they set up these institutions like schools and universities and hospitals. And finally, Ronan,
You could cash in your sins.
you could, which we'll talk about a bit later. But again, bit of a break. Let's do it.
Anyway, in the Middle Ages, there were simpler ways to be pardoned for your sins. Have you been worried? Worried that you might not go to heaven? That you might be stuck in purgatory for thousands of years? Well, help is at hand. If you want a fast, easy way to get back in the good books, our team of professional pardoners are just waiting to help you. Here at Cash My Sin. After just one consultation, our staff will be able to tell you how naughty you've been and how much money you have to pay the church to buy your pardon.
I stole this apple from my lordship's apple tree. Thanks to Cash My Sin, it cost me just £3 to buy my forgiveness.
Getting pardoned in the Middle Ages is easier than you think. Our prices are simple to understand and very reasonable.
I'm really jealous of my neighbour's horse. It's much better than mine.
That is the sin of envy. 2 pence, please. You are forgiven.
You see my new shoes? They're great, aren't they?
That is the sin of pride. Another 2 pence, please.
I don't have any more money. Alright, I lied.
Threepence.
What?
And that's another 2 pence. Anger is a sin as well. Just 1 shilling covers a multitude of sins.
Great.
It's easy, it's great value, and what's more, it means you won't burn in the fires of hell for all eternity. It's got to be worth it.
My chances are there, we're looking then, till I gave us a cost to Cash My Sin.
Hurry, offer must end by the early 1500s.
And it did. And thank you. It did, and we'll talk about that as well. Okay, I've gone back to English by the way down here. I've got rid of the Latin because No one even knew what the hell I was saying. Alright, so let's move across. This is what you're going to do now. Alright? So, think, pair, share. Notice how I'm using words. So what we're going to do, I'm going to think of the pair that you're going to think and pair and share.
What?
I don't know, I don't even know what I said. Alright, so what I'm going to do, I've written it down here. Think, pair, share activities pose a question that you must consider alone and then discuss with your neighbour before settling on a final answer. Or, alright, we'll do it this way.
Didn't they think, compare, and share? No.
It's really hard to do this. Alright, there we go. Alright, this is what think, pair, share is.
Think, pair, share activities pose a question that you must consider alone and then discuss with a neighbor before settling on a final answer.
Thank you, Siri. So, this is, you need to do this. You need to do this today. We need to do it, and it needs to be well written. Again, this is your come down from the Castle Project extravaganza. This is just getting back into the old school history. So, the church and religion in particular was a big deal in medieval Europe. So, this is the question. Why do you believe religion plays such a large part of people's lives, and why would they follow it so strongly? Why would they? They didn't question it. They just, boom, they followed it. So, this is what I want you to think about, because I want it to be in your answer. So, think about how the world has changed over time, all right, in 1500 years, how it's changed. How would advancements in science and technology, so technology being, this stuff that we've got, science being, fuel, weapons, we can fly to the moon, okay, all these advancements, we can build bombs, we have electricity, okay? So, think about those. How would they change our opinions on religion? Now, this is a tricky one. This is one I want to think about, and I want you to be quite deep about. So, I'll give you a little bit of background here. Okay, this is from me, this is from my brain, so don't take it as a quote. If we go back to medieval times, we'll go back to where these guys are, okay, they didn't have science as we have it now. Okay, so just follow me with this train of thought, alright? They didn't have science. So, if you have something like a giant ball of fire in the sky, Jared, that rises, Bo, that's not science, that's just reflecting light into Jared's eyes, so let's not do that. Okay? If you have a giant ball of fire in the sky that lights up every day, okay? Alright, you have people that die and you don't know why they die, okay? All of this stuff that goes on, and you had no science, you couldn't explain it, then you have, that's why they needed religion. Well, clearly, there must be a God that's doing this, that's making the world rise and fall and people die and I can do this and there must be a God. Because they didn't have science. So, let's take it back. Let's take it back another few thousand odd years, okay? And we'll go to the Greeks and their religion, okay? So the Greeks had lots of gods. They had, their religion was cool. They had like fights. I just finished playing God of War Ascension, man. Their religion kicked. So, they had gods. There was a god of fire. There was a god of water. They had all these gods and all this, and they all represented this kind of stuff, and they all battled each other out. Now, we kind of believe that didn't happen, yeah? That was a story. Okay, no, we're not even up to that yet. Okay, that kind of didn't happen, and we moved on to religion, because we didn't have science. Now, we kind of live in a world, well, you guys live in a world where you know how the sun rises every day, okay? You know that the world is flat. You know how water works. Lads, hopefully... Sorry, can I say flat?
Yes.
Oh, that's a big secret, sorry. You know the world is round. You know how gravity works. You know how science works. You know how people evolve, if you want to go down that path. You know all this kind of stuff. So, what I'm suggesting now is, do we need that religion anymore? Because we kind of... So what I'm saying is maybe science is now kind of our religion. Alright? What happens in 100 years from now, 200 years from now, we might even question science. We might even question what we have now and say maybe that isn't the case. Anyway, that's probably way too deep for a Monday morning. So,
Getting pretty deep now.
yeah. So here's your question. It's recorded, so you can play back that little blurb later. I'm going to edit out, guys, and we'll slap you, etc. So, your question. Why do you believe religion played such a large part of people's lives, and why would they follow it so strongly? Think, pair, share, which means individually, by yourself, and we actually have no talking, alright? Because this is individual time, so cause is going to be hard. For 10 minutes, there's going to be absolute silence. Alright, you can pump away your research, you can write something up. What you're going to do is think about this question, you're going to do some research, you're going to write yourself a little paragraph. Just use pages, write yourself a little paragraph. Okay? Then, once that time is up, you're going to go to the person to the left or right of you. Okay? You guys are going to move completely. And you're going to talk about your opinion, the little bit of information that you came up with. Alright? You're going to share that. Alright? And then, you two are going to settle on an answer. Now, the reason why I do this, especially in this kind of unit where we're talking about religion and we're talking about, all these kind of different, everyone has a different opinion. And that's cool. That's fine. And that's what I want you to do. So, you're going to think for 10 minutes, you're going to write your own thoughts out, you're then going to share with your partner, and then you two are going to give me a final answer. Okay? And that final answer you put on the blog, which I'm going to put a post for you right now so you can put it straight in the blog. And you're also, both of you are going to put it into your iTunes U course notes. Make sense? Alright, so, there we go. This is a complex question. I want you to spend time thinking about and doing research on. You will do this as an individual and then in pairs share your thinking. Okay? Alright, here we go. So, it is now, what time is it? Alright, 20 to 10. You have 10 minutes. It's 40 past 9. You have 10 minutes of complete silence. Alright? To research, to think about this question here. Alright? And then to write your own little bit of information about this question. Alright? And then what you're going to do, I'll let you know when your 10 minutes is up. You're going to share that information with your partner and you're going to come up with a final answer. So 10 minutes starting.
Oh, Mr. Massive, Mr. Garcia.
Yeah.
You know when you were like, oh,
yeah.
It sounded like Blues of Blues Clues.
What? The little dog?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Really?
Yeah, it is.
Thank you for that. I would be a dog in a day. So.
Why do you believe religion played such a large part of people's lives and why would they follow it so strongly?
Thank you. 10 minutes starting now. Absolute silence.